It is the middle of the night in the control tower. Radars are active, a bright point moving perfectly, just as it had thousands of times before. And then, silence. Good night, Malaysian 370. The last phrase left on record. Seconds later, the most sought-after airplane of the century does something that, in theory, should not be possible. It becomes invisible. It does not explode on camera. It does not send out a cry for help. It leaves no clear trail. It simply goes dark in layers, as if someone were flipping switches in the exact order needed to make the world take longer to realize. Because the paradox that turns MH370 into a global nightmare is that it happened in the age of satellites, on a planet where you can track a lost cell phone in a park, and yet a Boeing with 239 people on board managed to vanish from radar, remain alive for hours, and still end up untraceable in the ocean. A commercial flight takes off with 239 people on board. It leaves Kuala Lumpur, and along a specific stretch of its route, at a specific moment, the airplane stops communicating with the world. Flight MH370 does not disappear out of nowhere. There is a technical sequence, an order, a choreography. First, the secondary radar drops out, the one that identifies you. Then comes a sharp turn, completely atypical. Then the last hard trace dies out near a specific point. And when radar can no longer see it, the thread changes. All that remains is a series of satellite handshakes, like heartbeats, telling us the aircraft kept flying for hours. That is the mechanism, layers of surveillance breaking down one by one, and then the ocean doing what it does best, making everything disappear inside its vastness. But to understand why this was possible, we first have to understand the rules of the world in which it happens. In commercial aviation, a flight is not just an airplane crossing the sky. It is a contract of surveillance. There is air traffic control. There is the transponder. There are reporting systems like ACARS. There are radio communications. There are satellite links. There are search and rescue protocols. And the system works because those layers overlap. If one fails, another saves you. The problem with MH370 is that several layers failed. And some of them failed at the worst possible moment. There is a moment that, in hindsight, looks small, administrative, boring, but becomes the seed of everything. The handover. The transfer of control between sectors. When an airplane passes from one frequency to another, from one jurisdiction to another, that transition is a window. And on MH370, that window became a crack. March 7th, 2014, 1642. UTC, departure from KLIA, Kuala Lumpur. 239 people. A flight that, on paper, is normal, routine, and for a while, it is. 19:30, UTC. The pilot answers control. He says the phrase, "The shift changes. The aircraft should move to the next frequency. It should check in on 120.9. It should continue the ritual. It does not." 2 minutes later, the first blackout happens, the one that turns this flight into a ghost. 17:21:13. UTC, the secondary radar, the SSR, drops out. This is key, so I'll explain it with a simple metaphor. Primary radar is a flashlight. It shines on an object and sees that something is there. Secondary radar is an ID badge. It does not just see you, it identifies you. It tags you. It gives your altitude. It makes you legible. When the SSR drops out, the airplane does not necessarily stop existing, but it stops presenting itself with a name and a surname. Was it a failure, or was it switched off? Because the Malaysian report considers it more likely that the loss of communications and systems happened because the systems were manually turned off, or because of a power interruption, not because of some bizarre, magical, ultra-rare malfunction. And if someone switched something off, then someone was controlling the panel. At roughly that same point, military radar detects something that should not be happening. A turnback, as if the airplane had decided to return, but without telling anyone. And then the flight stops being normal. Because an airplane going through a real emergency communicates it. It declares it. It asks for priority. It enters protocol. But here, there is nothing. There is no emergency call, no mayday, no clear automatic report to close the matter. There is silence and a turn. And that turn, on top of everything else, seems controlled. There are headings. There are recorded speeds. 231 degrees magnetic and around 496 knots. This is not a chaotic plunge. This is not a plane with no hands on it. It is an airplane that is still obeying. But then, who was guiding it? Because the airplane does not decide, someone decides. 1822, 12 UTC. The primary contact ends near MEKAR. That is the last hard trace inside the Malaysian area. The last place where radar, like a flashlight, can say something was here. From that point on, the ocean takes over. And right there, when radar is no longer useful, when your mind is preparing for the end, the most unsettling evidence in the case appears. The SATCOM handshakes. Somehow, the airplane keeps answering a satellite at intervals. It is not a phone call. It is not a conversation. It is colder than that. A technical handshake. A ping saying, I'm still here, I'm still connected, I still have power. And suddenly, MH370 stops being a mystery of minutes and becomes a mystery of hours. How can an airplane that vanishes from conventional control, that deviates, that switches off layers of visibility, keep flying for hours without anyone being able to tell you where it is? This is where the case turns into science under uncertainty. Because those pings allow us to build arcs, estimate distances, infer a probable trajectory, but they do not give you an exact coordinate. They give you a boundary, an edge, a statistical trail. And that difference between precision and inference is where all the wars of this case begin. Because the public hears, nothing is known, while investigators hear, not enough is known. There is a whole cluster of confirmed, almost certain, highly probable. But the word confirmed becomes a narrative trap. Confirmed by whom? By what standard? What counts as proof when you do not have the black boxes? And while the world argues over definitions, something else is happening. Time. Because search and rescue is not a magic button. It requires coordination. It requires someone to raise the alarm in the right place. And one of the most painful conclusions is that there were coordination failures and delays. Critical minutes that, in a case like this, become miles. And miles become an infinite ocean. If the aircraft deviates, if it shuts systems down, if it crosses a blind spot, every minute you do not track it, the possible search area expands like a fire. And this is where the silent villain appears, the one that does not need to conspire. The ocean, the depth, the weather, currents, a gigantic area, and a single small target inside a universe of water. And the worst part is that without the black boxes, what you have is not a closed story. It is a puzzle with missing pieces. And MH370 becomes a machine for theories. A secret landing, a state hijacking, an electrical fire, hypoxia, suicide, third parties on board. Everything survives because there is no physical closure. July 29th, 2015. On a beach on Réunion Island, a piece appears. The flaperon. Suddenly, something from the airplane is in the real world. It is no longer just a point, a screen, and cold calculations. And when that piece is confirmed, the mystery changes shape. It is no longer based only on, did it crash or didn't it crash? Now it is, where exactly did it crash? Because one piece can tell you that it ended in the Indian Ocean, but it cannot tell you where the rest is. It cannot tell you whether there is a debris field. It cannot tell you whether the fuselage is intact or broken. It cannot tell you whether the black boxes are centimeters from the mud or hundreds of kilometers away. And here comes another painful chapter. The massive search. Years of underwater searching, technology, ships, seafloor maps. One of the biggest operations ever attempted. And after all that, the result sounds like a cruel joke. Nothing. Not because loose pieces were not found on beaches years later, but because the piece that closes the case does not appear. And you might ask yourself, how is it possible to fail while looking for something that large? Because searching in the ocean is not searching for an object, it is searching for a story. You are looking for a period at the end of a sentence using incomplete data. You are drawing the end of the flight with pings and assumptions. You are betting that the drift model matches reality. You are choosing a search zone like someone choosing a door in an endless hallway. And if you choose wrong, you can map 140,000 square kilometers and still not touch the truth with the tips of your fingers. And this is where MH370 stops being only a technical mystery and becomes a cultural myth. Because people cannot tolerate a vacuum. A vacuum must be filled. It gets filled with the phrase from the last transmission. It gets filled with the precise SSR blackout. It gets filled with the turnback that looks intentional. It gets filled with pings suggesting hours of flight. It gets filled with a flaperon washing onto a beach like a message in a bottle. The 2018 report does not determine a definitive cause. It does not give you one single clean story. It leaves you with a space, possibilities that cannot be ruled out, and that space, for the internet, is fuel. But the real world contains something the internet barely looks at. Families. Families who cannot bury their loved ones. Families who have no place to go. Families living through the hardest kind of grief, a grief without a body. That is why this case does not die. That is why, even a decade later, the world returns to the sea. In December 2024, Malaysia approves resuming the search under a brutal model. Pay only if the plane is found. An agreement worth around $70 million. And between March 2025 and January 2026, a private company tries again. The ships return. The maps return. That uneasy hope returns. The kind that only exists when one crucial piece is still missing. But they do not find it. In 2026, they announce the end of the latest attempt with no discovery. The families push for an extension. At this point, the mystery becomes something bigger than an airplane. It becomes a lesson about control in the middle of uncertainty. Because MH370 forced the world to admit a very uncomfortable truth. Even with systems designed to know where everything is, a short chain of events can break surveillance, a vulnerable handover, a systems blackout, a turn with no warning and no apparent logic, a gigantic ocean, incomplete data, a human delay, and then it is gone. The airplane becomes a ghost. MH370 did not just leave questions behind, it left changes. After MH370, the industry accelerated global tracking standards, including normal tracking and distress tracking, with far more demanding time requirements. As if the world were saying, never again. Never again lose an airplane in silence. The problem is, MH370 is still out there, like an open question, floating on the edge of our technological confidence. If tomorrow a single thing appeared, just one, what would it have to be to close the case? A black box, a large section of fuselage, a coordinate too undeniable to ignore. Because if none of that ever appears, then MH370 becomes something that hurts more than an air disaster. It becomes a limit, the limit of what we can prove, the limit of what we can know, the limit of our desire for control. And that is why, even decades from now, this case will remain alive. Because it is not just a lost airplane. It is a reminder that sometimes the world leaves you without an ending. Or, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, support the channel by subscribing. That way, we can keep bringing you new mysteries. And tell me, is there a specific story you'd like us to tell for you? Sending you a hug.